In a quaint village named Providence, a couple had recently settled into their new residence, eagerly awaiting the arrival of their firstborn. Willie, a newcomer to the role of district police officer, had just been posted in the vicinity. On his inaugural day, the captain had introduced him to Terry, his partner of over 16 years in law enforcement. They left the duo to acquaint themselves. Terry caught sight of Willie's red eyes, concerned whether it was a sign of illness before they embarked on their police duties. Terry took the lead in conversation, proudly sharing stories of his daring exploits as a cop who often managed to evade consequences. They stopped at a shop, picked up coffee without making a payment to demonstrate his claim, and then drove to Terry's girlfriend's place. Terry instructed Willie to remain in the car, observing the husband, who was oblivious to Terry's romantic relationship with his wife. Inside the home, Terry's spouse, oblivious to her pregnancy, continued to adorn the house independently. She ventured out to purchase groceries. There, she encountered an enigmatic individual. Intrigued, she inquired from the shopkeeper about his presence. The individual merely stated that he was someone to contact for any needs. Meanwhile, Terry was engrossed in spending quality time with a woman who was already married. Meanwhile, Willie got a radio message regarding a situation at 11:15. He attempted to reach Terry, but his efforts were thwarted when the spouse came home and found Willie at his doorstep. The spouse immediately accused Willie of being involved in an affair, leading Willie to leave in his vehicle to fulfill his responsibilities. Upon reaching the location, Willie noticed the door was open, suspecting it might be a threat. He swiftly grabbed his firearm and entered the premises. Little did he know, a woman was preparing food with her headphones on, as she was bending over to gather some trash with a knife in her hand. She struck him several times before overpowering him, choking him until he lost consciousness. As he lay on the ground, barely conscious, he witnessed the woman lying next to him, bleeding profusely with a piece of wood stuck in her back. Willie was taken aback and had no clue on how to proceed. Terry showed up, still in high spirits from his rendezvous with the married lady. Yet he could sense Willie's unease, to which Willie directed him to look up the stairs. Upon discovering the deceased, Terry's anger surged, and he was on the verge of dialing the station to report the crime. But then he recalled his time off duty spent with the married woman, which made him explode in anger, and he kicked a nearby basket, uncovering a pile of cash on the ground. Terry swiftly informed Willie that they had to erase any evidence and act as though nothing had occurred. The pair destroyed the house to make it appear as though it had been burglarized and then headed to a remote location, feigning to be on the job. Officer Terry then arrested a woman he had been involved with in an affair for exceeding the speed limit by 4 miles. As they got a message on their radio about the murder, they rushed to the location where they encountered Captain Ann and the spouse of the victim. The husband was visibly distressed and begged the officers to locate the killer and ensure they faced justice. He also disclosed that his wife had a masseur visiting their residence, indicating they should begin their search there. The pair then proceeded to Terry's hideout, where he kept some of his possessions. He had placed the cash there and was about to secure it when Willie inquired about the lock code for the key. Terry handed it over, assuring Willie he could rely on him. They both pledged to keep the money a secret and agreed to divide it once the situation had settled. That evening, Willie came back feeling uneasy and disclosed everything to his wife. However, this time, he pointed fingers at Terry as the murderer. She expressed her desire to meet Terry to assess his trustworthiness. Meanwhile, at a pub, Captain Ann was approached by the individual Terry had fined for exceeding the speed limit by 4 miles. Captain Ann apologized on his behalf and assured her it wouldn't recur. Upon examining the ticket, she noticed a suspicious gap between the time of the crime and when Terry issued the ticket, raising her suspicions. On the tragic day of the murder, the police failed to notice the masseur who witnessed the crime and quietly escaped through an open window. During their questioning, he acted as if he was unaware of the incident, claiming he was merely a masseur to the victim, who he had only provided massages to for her entertainment. Realizing that this individual seemed incapable of being a suspect and that they couldn't link the murder to him, they decided to let him go. Later that evening, Willie extended an invitation to Terry for a meal. From the perspective of the wife, Caro, she returned home from her job to discover her husband lying in a pool of his own blood, yet she didn't respond. It was later revealed that Caro was having an affair with his secretary, and together they had planned the murder of his wife. A message came through from the hired assassin, asking to meet at the assassin's workshop. He reported that upon arriving at the house, he discovered his wife had been killed, but was unable to locate the money. He suspected that his wife's murder had been ordered by someone else. However, Caro denied any involvement, insisting that he had been the sole person he had been in contact with. The assassin mentioned he had to be compensated, but Mr. Caro lacked the funds to fulfill this, so he offered him a deadline, or else he would be buried 6 feet beneath his wife. That night, during dinner, the business partners discussed law enforcement. Terry shared his motivation for joining the police force. He was frequently targeted by bullies in his youth, leading him to choose a career in law to seek justice for those who bullied others. Willie's wife, Paige, shared a story about a family member who was a police officer and was involved in accepting bribes and engaging in illegal activities. This revelation made Terry realize that Willie had betrayed his trust by confiding in his wife. Terry was on his way out when he heard a dog's whimpering outside. The couple hurried outside to find their dog, which was found lifeless on the ground, causing Paige to weep deeply. The following day, at the police station, Terry made amends to Willie for the events of the previous night, expressing his hope that this incident wouldn't hinder their potential friendship. At the station, the commanding officer briefed the two men on the evidence discovered at the crime scene, mentioning that the victim was found to have a substantial life insurance policy and was also unfaithful to her husband. Therefore, the investigation into the victim's personal life was deemed necessary to uncover any incriminating evidence. While grieving her deceased son, the captain is alerted to the presence of 2 officers, Terry and Willie, through a confidential informant. The investigation reveals their footprints scattered throughout the area. Subsequently, he interrogates the pair, who feign innocence, claiming they were at her residence for a morning coffee before departing upon learning of her son's demise. In fear, Paige, Willie's spouse, visits a supermarket to purchase her provisions and discreetly notes down the contact information of a hired killer. She arranges a meeting at a cafe, pleading with him to eliminate Terry before any harm befalls her husband. To cover the substantial cost of executing a police officer, Paige, who is expecting, visits the hideout where the funds are stored. She manages to access it thanks to her husband's provision of the key and retrieves the money. She distributes a portion of the funds to the assassin via a mailbox marked The Irishman. Terry arrives home that night, only to be attacked. He fights back, but is on the verge of being choked to death when his partner fires at the assailant, prompting Terry to swiftly bind a rope around his ankle, using it to sink the anchor into the river to drown the assassin. Willie arrives at Terry's place to recount the brutal attack he just survived. Terry points a gun at Willie, accusing him of being involved in the earlier attack, believing it was Willie's doing. Willie panics and convinces Terry to disarm, explaining the events leading up to the attack, stating that they are now free and can divide the spoils. Terry, however, is indifferent to these claims and continues to hold Willie at gunpoint, ordering him to head to the hideout. At the same time, Captain Murphy is observing the crew through her computer, pondering their activities. Consequently, she decides to follow them. Upon arriving at the hideout, Terry instructs Willie to open the box. Observing the absence of the cash, Willie appears puzzled, mentioning he's never been there before. However, Terry suspects it's his wife. He explains that he took the dog's life to signal to his wife to stay away. He advises Willie to contact his wife and inquire about the money, setting up the phone for a speaker call. In the midst of the conversation, Paige admits to taking the money to shield him from Terry, who is responsible for the death of Mr. Cato's wife. Upon discovering Willie's deception, he confronts him, resulting in a fatal shot to Officer Willie. Meanwhile, Captain Murphy arrives at the scene, only to discover the deceased. On the other end, Paige is on the verge of escaping with the money when she hears a call from Captain Murphy. She confesses the entire truth to him, revealing that Terry was the one who killed Mr. Cato's wife. Willie learned of this, and that's the reason for his action. Captain Murphy, upon hearing the radio message, immediately broadcasts a warning to all the police officers on duty to be on the lookout for Officer Terry. That evening, despite the intense traffic, Terry easily locates Peg. She cleverly evades him by striking him with the car door. He attempts to shoot her multiple times, yet she flees unharmed. Her health is deteriorating, and she navigates through the congestion as Terry chases after her. At that point, Terry reveals that he is innocent and that her husband is the true murderer. Paige doesn't trust him. Captain Murphy, left with no other option, shoots him, ending his life instantly. After giving birth, Paige rests in the hospital bed. Upon awakening, she confronts Captain Murphy, pleading for him to disclose the truth about the events that unfolded. However, he admits to knowing very little about the situation. At that point, the assassin changes his appearance by becoming a hospital janitor and sneaks into the room. Observing the two conversing, he exits. Captain Murphy pleads with Paige once more to reveal the truth for her son's sake, but she remains firm, leading Captain Murphy to leave the room to retrieve her child. The assassin seizes the moment to eliminate Paige and steals the cash. Stepping into the elevator, he encounters a mysterious woman. It's later revealed that she's Deborah. As the elevator door opens, Captain Murphy and Deborah are found dead on the ground, with the money scattered throughout the elevator. Towards the movie's conclusion, it's revealed that Captain Murphy has adopted Willie's child and is now his guardian, marking the end of the film.